this happens to be the first day of the month of his birthday, August 15th. Many years back, we got the independence, and India got freedom, and Sri Aurobindo's birthday on the same date. We thought that we should have a month-long celebration where we would have talks inspired by his works, or directly or indirectly. As you know, that recent studies have shown that Sri Aurobindo is probably one of the most quoted personalities in the world for various topics. And today, I will now go straight to the first talk of the 150th anniversary celebrations for the month of August. Is my dear friend Apala. So Apala, while I introduced you, if you could already come and sit while people come. The topic is designing for a higher consciousness. And Apala Lahiri is a co-founder of Human Factors International, Middle East, Asia, Africa, and Australia, and Global Chief of Technical Staff. Her passion is to envision how user experience can be a change agent using digital channels. She's also fascinated by changes in user experience across time and space. Apala is an award-winning designer, International Audi Design Award 1996. She co-edited the book Innovative Solutions, What Designers Need to Know for Today's Emerging Markets, and a TEDx talk is 3 Laws of User Experience. She was invited to speak on user experience design and artificial intelligence at the AI for Good Conference 2017, organized by the United Nations. I'm so happy that finally this dream has come true when I get to hear you. Thank you, Apala, and being so generous and kind to do it in the small space in the art gallery. So much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lalit. It's, I have been here so many times and I've enjoyed so many amazing performances, talks, that it is, I'm feeling really, fortunate that I am going to be able to speak today, and very, very honored that this is the first day of a very special birthday month of Sri Aurobindo. That is indeed an honor for me to be the first speaker. So before I start my, the core of the talk, I just did want to explain a little bit about this field of design, because design is such a large field that, it's good to contextualize the area of design I come from. And that area of design is not so much about designing physical products, not designing fabric, clothes, furniture. That the area of design I belong to is about designing digital experiences. So when any one of you interact with any app that you have, or you interact with Amazon, or you interact with the banking site, or an educational site, or an app, that's the experience that I specialize in designing. So there's the technology, and there is the experience designed around the technology, because the technology is all dense and that doesn't care for the experience. But we come into the picture and make sure that all of you can use the technology in a manner that is easy, intuitive, etc. So that's the field. It's called user experience design, and my talk is about this subfield of design. So to talk about this field and its journey to designing for higher consciousness, we have to go backwards, and the story kind of takes us back to the Industrial Revolution, where design was looked at as a means of designing really ergonomic and efficient factories. Because the Industrial Revolution needed more and more production of goods for people, and there was, that whole fueling of the economies, etc. So in designing efficient ways that a factory works, industrial designers came in and started to look at, how can I design the factory efficiently? The goal was really productivity, efficiency. And in doing that, they also started to look at the users of those machines, that is the workers in the factories, as objects just like the machines. They had to look at these human beings and say, how can this human being operate more productively? So let us take the measurements of these people, the average measurements, their heights, etc., the length of their arms. How will we place the machines? How will the levers be placed? How will the dials be placed so they can see clearly? Aim was, how can they work quickly? If they work quickly, they produce more goods. If they produce more goods, that leads to more, sales, profits, etc. So that's what industrial designers and ergonomists did, and user experience draws from that legacy. So the thing to note here is that while so much focus on efficiency and productivity and speed of use and reduced injuries, because no factory owner wanted people to be falling ill because they have pain in their arms, because the machines are placed in such a manner or it's so difficult to operate, so they didn't want any injuries or health issues to happen. But there was no concern about the feelings of the workers. The lived and felt experience of these human beings was of no concern, because industrial design and the Industrial Revolution really based itself on what was scientifically measurable, and feelings were not scientifically measurable. Hence, anything qualitative like feelings was considered unnecessary and irrelevant and really unreal, because you could measure it, and so there was no focus on it. So it continued, and we had amazing designers who created better and better ways that you could measure how working places could be configured ergonomically, how chairs could be designed ergonomically, how human beings who used them could therefore work more efficiently. So much skill was part of that from the designer's perspective. Then this was, sort of in the late 19th century. Then in the early 20th century came scientific ways of management and concepts of optimizing human performance and putting together a management philosophy, and Frederick Taylor is very famous for that. Taylor's perspective on how can you scientifically manage workers and run factories and optimize human performance based on you better work. If you don't work, you don't get paid. And so to work better, this is the way, things are configured. His principle was followed by all large industrial establishments at that time. And therefore, more boost was, given to this whole concept of the human beings who are using the products industrial designers or ergonomists design. Those human beings are really not of much importance except as a cog in that whole wheel of industrial production. It took a long time, and it was only in early it was around 1980s, 1990s, that suddenly there was a change in this perspective. And instead of ergonomics, there were veteran designers and design scholars who started talking about user experience, and thereby saying, no, we can't just look at people's efficiency and productivity. You have to look at emotions. We have to look at how people feel. We have to delight the users of all our systems. That's very important. And suddenly a whole new area became part of what is now user experience design, but wasn't in that era. And now we talked of behavioral design, looking at behavior, understanding human behavior, and therefore being able to persuade people and to be able to play towards people making certain positive decisions, etc. And not just, it's not a transaction that I'm working fast because I'm going to be paid so much, but also looking at, will you feel good? That became part of design, and that was good. But again, I have to say that delighting people, the reason was not because, people must feel bliss and liberation. No, it was that if they feel delighted, they'll buy more. It was because suddenly then in this late 20th century, it was how can you have people be efficient consumers? And they can be efficient consumers if A, you design things so it's quick for them, but also you give them different kinds of motivation and incentivize their journey. Then they will keep coming back and they will buy more and they'll subscribe and they'll tell others. So the delight was really because that needed to be done to persuade people. So that happened, and we, user experience, now started to combine all our skills to make design efficient, intuitive, easy to use, along with how can I persuade people. Whole areas from behavioral economics, social psychology were all put together with the traditional cognitive psychology that we used for design. And that was going on for a while. It was only in the last maybe 2 decades, from sort of early 21st century, that there was a shift, a slight shift to looking at society and saying it's not about individual people. Individuals exist in a society. So if individuals are going to feel good or buy things or use things, they're influenced by others. So let's look at how they are influenced. And then suddenly we had social sciences coming into our design field, so anthropology and sociology, all of that came in, how to study how society functions. Again, there was no focus on human values, on values of justice or equality or benevolence or transcendence. No, it was always, at the end of the day, how will people buy more? If they're influenced by their parents, how can we influence their parents? If they're influenced by friends, how can we influence their friends? So that they buy only from, Myntra and not from the other place. So it was ultimately, the aim remained the same. How can you sell more and how can you earn more profits? There was no other focus. And as designers, we became better and better. We became better and better at making things efficient. So you will hear of things like, on this particular app or site, you can buy something in 3 clicks. And how can you design something complex to end the experience for the end user with just 3 clicks? It requires a lot of skill. And we became very good at it. And then we started to put in all our effort also in saying, how will I make you buy your air tickets from this site and not that site? You know what? I'll add a lot of incentives. I'll say that, only 3 seats left, even if there are hundreds of seats left, because there's a part of the human brain that reacts immediately. You can't control yourself, because scarcity, we are very scared of. And it's a primitive sort of wiring. And so we immediately grab that. Sometimes we don't even need it, but we'll grab it. So as designers, we also became very good at using all of these techniques. And because it was really about profit and sales and how those who were sponsoring work, right? So it was the large organizations, the banks, the e-commerce companies, all the large companies, the tech companies. It was their goals that, as designers, we learned to execute and implement, and we did it really well. So the field of UX design boomed, and lots of people wanted to become UX designers. But what we kept doing is to, in order to maximize efficiencies and profits, we would now segment and divide people. So instead of uniting humanity, one unified world, we started to divide and say, okay, Bank A, you want to sell more credit cards, right? Okay, now what we'll do is, we will look at how the people who use your bank, they fall under different categories. We looked at income levels, education levels, professions, cities, rural areas, etc. And we categorized and boxed people and said, these, 75,000 people, they are in this segment or slot. These 85,000 people, they are very good because they have a lot of money. So they are prime target, Let's look after them really. And then, 2 million people, they are really poor. Forget them. They don't need to have anything. They don't need to have access. The the sponsors, the organizations would also not want to include people from whom they could not earn money, at least not in a traditional model. They were also not mostly interested in exploring new business models. There could be new ways in which poorer people could also be part of the picture, and the company would still earn more money, but they were not interested. It was only segment and let's go to the more, sort of profitable segments. And as designers, that was also something we really did very well. We learned how to understand users and segment them. And in some ways, we were what philosopher Michel Foucault said, we were designing this panopticon, not knowing that we were doing that. We were like, what he says is the bricklayers of a real physical jail or physical panopticon. We were the bricklayers as designers of a virtual panopticon. And why do I say that? Because here we are designing this site or app with all these segments, and the organization is looking at all these people continuously and anonymously. You don't know, but they're constantly looking because we've designed it in that way. And they're saying, oh, I can see that I can get you and sell you another card. And then we are making that journey really interesting and easy so that they can get to you and tell you, this is a card, why don't you take this credit card? It's going to give you these benefits. You don't need it. There is no need for it. But that's what the virtual panopticon is providing the organization, to look at every one of you and say, constantly selling or monitoring or supervising. And as designers, we just kept doing that without realizing, hey, what is this larger impact? We didn't ask those questions. We did not think it was our job. We had no awareness. Our consciousness was at another level of materiality. That's where we existed. And then suddenly, maybe 5 years ago, I first saw, because I was also in the process of my own PhD research, I saw emergent movements by designers, by design scholars, by design practitioners, who said, no, this is not right. As designers, we have the responsibility to make sure that in our case, we design all these technology-related experiences. Are these technologies benefiting everybody? Are they excluding large numbers of people? Are they doing something unethical without the knowledge of the people that they are supposedly serving? As designers, we have to voice our opinion because we know what's happening. And so movements like design justice, which is now very important, came up saying, design, and there were so many examples, design keeps marginalizing in their ecosystem people of color, black people, gender fluid people. It very concertedly and intentionally marginalizes those people. So, examples like, you make a sensor-based soap dispenser in the airports, and they found that the soap dispensers would not react or recognize dark skin tones. It only recognized fair skin tones. So if you were dark, if you were black or brown, you would be standing in front of the dispenser, it would do nothing. And so there were many, many, many examples of how, as designers, we designed that. But we didn't ask the question, why? Why is it excluding so many people? So design justice started to raise its voice and say, this is not right. Be conscious, be aware, designers. Protest when you see injustice like this. Then came movements where technology folks and designers started to collaborate. And so there's a big movement called Tech Will Not Build It. When they see that what they are building, and this is very much it's very much part of the artificial intelligence ecosystem around the world, but particularly in America, the larger companies like Google and Facebook, etc. Many, many AI researchers and designers have in the last year walked out of the company, given up their plush jobs, power, everything, because they realized what they were told they were working for, or the product or service they were all designing, was actually being given to the government for surveillance, for discriminating against certain groups of people. So when they understood that, they said, either you stop this or we are going. And they just literally walked out. And it's now grown into a big movement saying, if we know that this thing we've been asked to design is going to be ultimately used for something that doesn't benefit the planet, that doesn't benefit people, we are not going to do it. This was unheard of earlier. I mean, everybody just went, and designers, we all did our job, and we showed our portfolio and said, hey, see how nicely I've designed this. We just didn't care whether ultimately people suffered for it or not. But that started changing. There are design movements which are looking at how can you take the cultures of indigenous people in America and Canada to begin with, and their cultures, how can those attributes and philosophies be part of the design process, because they've always been dismissed as being pre-modern, primitive, so they're not important. But now suddenly the wheel is turning, and there's this consciousness about integrating, about unity, about oneness, that is just amazing. And I think therefore at this point in time, as I look at my journey, 30 years of being in user experience design, and for maybe the first 20 years, I was totally ignorant. I had no idea that what I'm doing is impacting people very unequally. And it is my contribution to more injustice. I had absolutely no idea. I was just happy doing my stuff and boasting about my work and showcasing what I've done and, getting the applause. It is only in the last 10 years that I've started, maybe because of the PhD and also because the organization that, you will also hear from Eric afterwards, but the organization we have created, HFI, where where I exist, I think we look at life not just in this moment, but in the future and at other realms. That has helped me also, that has inspired me to question what I do, to be able to voice my dissent with current mainstream design frameworks which have zero awareness and instill zero awareness in designers. My organization has also helped me take my thinking forward. And so I'm working, therefore, inspired by all these emergent movements, looking at how can I create design frameworks that help designers to stop sticking to the material aspect of design, which is what we are taught in design schools, to move away from that and to reflect and to seek and to journey to a new realm of experiencing this oneness, this unity, that without that, we just cannot move to another level of consciousness as far as designers are concerned. And I think, we have as designers, we've started to, at least many of us have started to think lightly of ourselves and think more deeply about the world. And I wanted to, end with a quote from Sri Aurobindo, which I felt was just as if he had listened to my thoughts and he was writing that quote. But of course, that was written so many, many years ago. But it's exactly what is happening and what is needed. He said, "The unification of the human world is underway. A new spirit of oneness will take hold of the human race." And as I read this, I had goosebumps, because this is what is needed and what we are just seeing the emergence of in the world of design. So I feel the next decade of my journey is going to be infused with being able to work with other designers, all wanting to think and feel more awareness and unity and be at another level of consciousness, which I didn't think was ever possible. But I feel so hopeful, and I think it'll be worth it to be in this field from now onwards. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Would you like to take a few?
Anything, any question or comment, happy to.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I want to be sure if it's the right question.
Okay.
But I've had it in my mind for a long time with the advent of OTT.
OTT, yeah.
Availability of content has become really easy, but with my personal experience, I'm a designer myself.
Okay.
I do e-learning.
Oh, wow.
And so I've seen the shift of how how things have happened from when I started design and to where it is now. Like you rightly said, it's become more globalized. That's what the general idea is. But if you take the example of OTT, right, and some content is available for certain sections of geographies and not for everyone. So the consumption of art all over the world is not the same, which puts different people in different geographies at an advantage and disadvantage. How do you think as a designer, let's say a person working in a big organization like the biggest OTT, like say Netflix, can impact in a small way to solve this problem?
Yeah, I think, it's important for designers who work, say, in Netflix or other such streaming services to be able to say, why are you making content, and then depending on what earnings you get, make something available, or depending on what you have an idea of what certain cultures need or not. Why? If the designers don't protest about it, and when I say protest, I don't mean they have to stand with placards and shout slogans, but what are we good at? As designers, we are very good at understanding what's going on with people, with real people, not just inside business cubicles. So if we can channel our understanding of people and be able to show that, look at the way people really want content that you're not giving them, you're denying them. By doing that, you're actually also not earning enough money, and you're creating all these divisions and disadvantages and unequal ways. So one of the things that I'm doing a lot is, very recently, another big an e-commerce and OTT platform, they wanted us to do as a design team, they wanted us to look at education, because they were looking at, they were exploring questions of education and learning, especially distant learning. Now, they had a certain objective and a certain assumption. As we started to look at what that assumption was, we felt that it was perhaps not the correct assumption. How do you then make a large company who's feels very sure about it, how do you make them understand? So what we decided is, we will connect with people, just people from across all walks of life, but each one of them has something to do with consumption of education material. We connected with people via WhatsApp, just asking them simple questions about consumption of education services in one way or the other. And what we got from just that informal conversation, and we asked, say, 10 people, I asked 10 people, hey, I have this question, can you help me? What do you feel? And asked them to pass on that question to other people they knew. And so it was a cascading effect. And it was just simple, just using WhatsApp. What we got is this bunch of insights and opinions. And the interesting thing it was not aligned with what this organization was thinking. But now we had this evidence to say, think twice. See, this is what people are saying and feeling. Are these people all the people? No, of course not. But this is just so that you are alerted to the fact that maybe your assumption isn't the only assumption or the right assumption. That helped them change direction, not hugely, but a little bit, in saying, okay, let's change the proposition a little. So I think as designers, we have to find ways in which we can connect with communities, because the answers are there. And if we can bring those forward and, put them on the radar, organizations and corporations look at it because they're also looking at, okay, if this is not going to work, then we are not, it's going to be a huge waste of money. Just from that perspective, they will look at it. But as my subjective opinion, nobody will listen to it so strongly. But so I need to channel my connection with communities. And so I feel designers must build strong connections with communities. It's a collective. I'm not this, I should not stay in my bubble as I'm this designer. I know this is very creative and I'm going to just say that this is important. No, I am just a facilitator and enabler of everyone's movement to evolve in their journey. So I must connect with communities. I feel so strongly that as designers, we don't do enough of that. We stay in our bubbles. So yeah, that's my very long answer, but I'm very, passionate about this aspect. Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah. Sure.
So, obviously, Sri Aurobindo spoke a lot about the future of humanity, and he did talk about the emergence of a new consciousness and supramental consciousness, and he talked about the post-human journey towards post-humanism. And today, we see artificial intelligence and the future of design literally leading us into the future of human evolution. So, can you talk a little bit more deeply about this? Because obviously you are inspired by your yourself when you are in the field of design. Do you see these works to be one of the guiding works that could actually help technology thinkers, pave the road forward in design? How can that happen?
Absolutely. And before I answer, I will say that the next talk is very much around this. So you may get much better answers there. But I will say this, that yes, Sri Aurobindo decades and decades ago sort of visualized the supramental, and we are looking at artificial intelligence, and I think we miss the whole point if we look at it as just another technology, just another line of code and smart code. No, this is perhaps the emergence of a new humanity, but we've got to recognize that, and therefore the people working in the field must be made aware of this. And what I find is just small signs. So there's a bunch of people in artificial intelligence research who are talking about this and saying, look at not just Sri Aurobindo, but they're saying, look at spiritual ways of looking at the new human. So they've taken a lot from Buddhism and trying to see how that really guides artificial intelligence. So I think it's a small minority though, and I think how we can increase that awareness, and so that is part of this whole AI ecosystem, is so important, because the guidance is there, but not all of us are looking at it or are even aware of it. So yeah.
Yeah.
I just have one small
Sure.
comment on the
Sure.
question. You spoke just so well. It felt like it was not exactly prose, it felt more like a poem to me. Your whole spirit was beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. That really makes my day. Thank you. Much appreciate your. Okay, thank you. I've got to just take the water and.
Yes, absolutely. Can you close the mic there when it's time to show it back?
Is it here?
It's up here, sorry. I'll just put it on, otherwise it'll take the back. Well, I have no words to tell you how brilliant and how wise your speech, your talk was. You talked about design, redesign, you talked about connecting with communities and then connecting with inner communities and then getting ready for the new consciousness. Obviously, as Aurobindo said, that we have to start working with the new spirit, and it was simply beautiful for me. The design can also have such a strong role and impact human beings. In fact, I find that human factors is also beginning to probably be now humane factors. So well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.